Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a video that's going to address one of the questions that I get most often in 16 years of taking day-to-day calls from real estate agents, which is what's the best lead for realtors? All right, so I'm going to dive into that. Before I do, let me explain a little bit about why I am qualified to answer this question for you. So first of all, I'm a founder of an inbound marketing company. More importantly, I've been in the real estate marketing industry for 16 years. I was part of Agent Image's original team that focused on online marketing. I moved over to very large web development, running a sales team there. And I then moved over to Inforza as the senior vice president of sales, which is another real estate marketing company. And then I founded my own company about 7 years ago. All of that's pretty good experience, but on top of that, I've been a lifetime marketer. I've run call centers for AT&T and MCI, Sprint. I've done door knocking for ADT, run canvassing crews for ADT. There's very little types of marketing that I haven't done. I've run a very, very large multimedia communication center for a brand that I'm a little embarrassed about, so I'm not going to mention it, but it was huge. And I'm going to say that I have a reasonable, strong background in understanding lead type, lead quantity, and things of that nature. In my career, every single thing that I've listed here, I have actually run large organizations processing or generating these kinds of leads. So I have a pretty good understanding of what lead quality tends to be, why it tends to be that way. It is just an opinion. It's a very educated opinion. And I am going to do my best to help out all of you who might be wondering, what is the actual best lead that you can get as a real estate agent? Now, let's start off. Unfortunately, the answer to the question isn't quite as simple as the title, which makes this feel a little clickbaity, but I think the question is better phrased, is what is the best lead for you as a realtor, but that doesn't sound as catchy as a title. And I am going to try to address that. What is the best lead for you as a realtor? Okay. So we're going to rank these common lead types. And the ranking factors that we have is lead conversion rate, something that people don't talk a lot about. That is, how many leads do you have to work in order to see that one lead turn into a transaction? That's lead conversion rate. Lead cost and acquisition. Now, this is a number that certain providers out there like Ylopo talk a lot about. How much does it cost to actually acquire a lead? I may not know the numbers for all of these services, but I generally have a general idea. So that's going to be a little broader for me because I don't focus on it. I focus on lead conversion rate personally, but we'll talk about it. Longevity. Here's an interesting one, also one that most people don't talk about. Recurring lead generation based on previous efforts. In other words, some of these marketing methods have the ability to generate ongoing leads for many years based on a spend that you did like 5 years ago. Okay. Some of them don't. Some of them rely on a lot of extra work for you to do that, such as outgoing calls, nurturing email campaigns, things like that. Some of them don't require that. The marketing itself stays in place and then delivers leads over time. It's worth mentioning. It's also going into the overall score. I'm more going to refer to these things in order to create the score for these services. And I'm going to go down, I'm going to type it on the screen, and then I'm going to explain myself. All right. All other generalized factors will be explained source by source. So if I feel like there's an individual source, like a factor for that particular source that you should know about or that impacts the overall subject of this video, which is what is the best lead for realtors or the kind of realtor that you are, maybe. All right. So let's talk about sphere of influence and referral. First of all, with this particular lead type, in general, the rating is going to be about a 6 to 7 on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is the worst, shouldn't even ever do anything with it. 10 is the best. Every time you get one, you close it. sphere of influence and referrals these types of leads were made popular by every sales trainer throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Earl Nightingale, people that you guys wouldn't have even heard of, who I've studied at one point or another in my career. They're just so, outdated that you're never going to know who they were. But I will say that sphere of influence and referrals has been around since door knocking, really probably the 1930s to the 1950s. 1930s was a lot of hand-to-hand sales, a lot of door knocking. Remember, not even everybody had a phone at that time. And so when you were knocking on the door in the neighborhood trying to sell whatever you were trying to sell, it was Zig Ziglar, it was pots and pans, and you would go, all right, I'm going to see if you think that anybody in this neighborhood, and then when might want your pots and pans. And remind you, long before the internet, didn't have the name of anybody in the neighborhood, didn't know anybody. So if Mary gave you the name of Betsy and told you that she thought she might need a new pair of pots and pans, that would be like back then, that would have been a very strong lead. That would have been also about a 6 or 7. These days, sphere of influence referrals is more about the lead type. This is either somebody got your name from somebody that you know, and they call you. Interestingly enough, the lead quality for sphere of influence and referrals has dropped because we live in the information age. So the value of a sphere of influence or referral lead is really going to depend on the strength of your online information. So, honestly, actually, it could be 3 to 7. If I was really more direct about it, 3 to 7 would be the score. It really kind of depends on how much effort you're putting into making sure that if your name gets added to somebody through sphere of influence, handed off to somebody else, there's a lot of ways to check you out beyond somebody saying this realtor was really good. You should call them. Now, there is one place where sphere of influence and referrals has an outsized reputation and is still a 10 of 10. Okay. That is in the hyper luxury spaces. And it doesn't matter where you're talking about, New York, LA, all the big major metro markets, especially in the blue states. Word of mouth referrals from person to person, when you are in the top 1% of income earners, it changes to 10 of 10 lead. Okay. It's also oftentimes the only way that super duper luxury agents expand their business, because you're not going to attract a billionaire via most media types. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just rare. Who has time for it? Really? And if you do have somebody looking, it's probably an assistant or maybe 3 of them. I have a personal assistant. Most of the people I know that are past a certain income point have personal assistants. So they're the ones out looking. And maybe they see something that's connected to your media, but then they have to decide whether or not they want to hand it off to their principal. And once again, it comes down to what is researchable. So yes, you get that lead, you pass the smell test, which most luxury agents of this kind would, because they usually do have incredibly robust websites, almost exclusively to nurture this specific type of lead, because they're not really getting much from SEO and they're not getting much from paid advertising because of the audience that they're trying to target. I'm not saying they're not getting anything. Jade Mills and other agents focus on some of these other lead systems that you see here, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And those leads, nobody in that level of real estate is really transparent with me and talking to me about lead conversion rate, unfortunately, but I can make some educated guesses. Cold calling, door knocking. Now, this is something that I've done more than almost anybody that's probably even watching the video. There's a handful of you out there that have been doing cold calls for 10, 20, 30 years. And if you do, you probably have me beat, because it would take that much cold calling to have done more than I've done in my career. So cold calling, door knocking. This really is a tough lead to generate, and it kind of depends on how you're generating a lead. If you got somebody else going out and doing the cold calling or door knocking for you, these leads tend to be fairly low quality. If you're going out and cold calling and door knocking yourself, then leads are automatically, all the cruddy things are qualified out as you're knocking on the door, and anybody whose name and number that you're taking is probably relatively decent. So once again, these lead types range from 3 to 7, maybe. There's a little bit that goes on when it comes to cold calling and door knocking that's hard to overcome, such as situational intent. So it's always been a pretty common thing that a really brilliant storyteller / salesperson can change somebody's mindset and move them from lukewarm to super hot. But if you're door knocking here in California, there's almost no way to do that right now. Like, you can't. It doesn't matter if you move somebody to super hot, convince them that they want to sell the home. Mechanically, they then have to go out and figure out where they're going to move after the fact. And there's a lot of variables, such as how expensive real estate price. Yes, they'll make $1 million if they sell their home, have $1 million cash. That's fantastic. But where are they going to go? Now, the good news is that there's still qualifying elements that you could find. And if you found them, this could be a 10, such as, I have a home, I'm in California, I hear what you're saying about selling it for $1 million. And now you go, well, have you thought about moving out of state? Well, as a matter of fact, I have. Bang, that's a 10 to 10 lead, or maybe an 8, maybe a 9, but it's a strong lead, because number one, anybody saying that number, you can sell their house almost instantaneously. So that's great on that end. Don't need to qualify them for income. That's great on that end. And now all you have to do is mechanically figure out, how do we list and get this home on the market? Real estate in California is so hot right now. Very little home staging, very little prep is required. You're probably automatically going to get bids and asks way above like ask price even now. So all you really need to do is find the person that's willing to move. And then when they're willing to move to like Las Vegas, which is common, Nashville, which is common, Austin, which is common, all from here in California where I live, then now you're talking like a strong lead with 2 sources of income, making this cold calling and door knocking still an incredibly strong, viable lead opportunity because of the control you have. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. And that's why it's not a 10-10, because you got to still go out, physically door knock. You got to figure out when people are home, probably have to do it on the weekends. Now, I'm going to say one other thing here. I'm going to put in a 2A or whatever. 2A is a form of circle prospecting. Circle prospecting is when you take a defined neighborhood and you have a strong approach into that neighborhood. Red X does it. Ricky Carruth talks about it a lot. Circle prospecting, though, is a way that you take a cold call and you add so much value into the cold call that it's really not a cold call anymore. And circle prospecting is, you already have a listing in a neighborhood. This would be a prime opportunity, and I would door knock this all the time currently, even in my current state, my current career. You've got a neighborhood where you've just had a listing go up or just sold a listing. There's any number of activities. You do an open house. If you're a new agent, you don't have a lot of sold listings, but there's an open house in the neighborhood that is run by your brokerage. A circle, not you, not your listing, brokerage's listing. If I was a new agent, man, I would go to every single open house that my brokerage was following, connect with the agent whose listing it was, find out if they had any intention of talking to the neighbors, or figure that out in the office. And then for the ones that didn't, I would go around and knock on the door and say, hey, I don't know if you know this, I'm a Keller Williams agent. Keller Williams has an open house going on. Are you interested in making any moves or seeing how the other half lives? You just ask a couple of questions, leading questions, and see what that person at the door says to you. And now, but you've got a real strong way to open a conversation, because most door knocking opportunities are won or lost in the first 3 to 5 seconds. So if you have a very, very strong intro, you can create a very, very strong lead that is almost as good. Well, maybe even better. It's more like a 5 to 7 now. Okay. Same thing on the phone. Same idea. TV and radio. All right. So there's not a lot of agents out there that are going to watch this video and go, oh my God, I've got a budget for TV and radio. Yeah, I know. I get it. But it does exist. I've certainly done my fair share of TV and radio. Loved infomercial leads. Loved them. Done tens of thousands of them. And they are so strong. as long as you're doing a long form infomercial type advertisement. TV and radio in general have gone down in their efficiencies. However, there's services out there like the Trade Desk and other companies like it that are getting much, much better at targeting audiences, bundling up advertising that is specific to you. And it's getting cheaper because obviously the traditional media channels are taking a beating right now. So TV and radio is still viable. You just have to do a little bit of education. Now, the expensive part with TV and radio is coming up with a commercial. And that's a factor which is going to lower my score on this. There's a lot of bars into it. Now, the lead quality when you get it generally tends to be very high. You should be able to convert 20 to 30% of these at a minimum. That's a high number for any kind of advertising, but the level of difficulty, you got to produce a commercial, scripts, lights, should be an infomercial, might have to do as much as 30 minutes. Everything that I'm saying right now eliminates probably about 85% of you that are watching this video, and the 15% that might be watching the video, you may have already done this. Now, my score for this lead type is once again broad, but I'm qualifying the broadness of it because it is like a 5 to 8. 5 being the difficulty and the cost. It's not the lead quality. Lead quality, I mean, you make it onto TV and you do just a really terrible, non-responsive ad, and well, the leads are going to suck. It's really all about the quality of your message. But if you focus in educating somebody, like in the home buying process, a special, I've got this web and TV people that are coming up all the time right now for the common thing out there for these types of broad media advertisements is solar, stuff like that. Pay attention to the commercials that you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, because if you see the same commercial over and over and over again, that commercial is a high converting commercial for the person who produced it. Worth noting. You do not need to be a genius to make this work for you. Just look for repetitious commercials like Cal Worthington and his dog Spot. Brilliant advertising gimmick. Animals, so on and so forth. All right. This is what we do here at InboundREM. Inbound Real Estate Marketing is inbound marketing. Obviously, I'm going to be biased. I know most forms of marketing better than most humans do. I've done more of it more broadly than almost anybody I've ever met. And I've got to say that inbound marketing is by far and away the most efficient, effective, ROI, happy leads. Generally speaking, when I get leads for InboundREM through inbound marketing, my close ratio is between 25 and 50%. My top clients, same thing. Close ratio, incredibly high. The only reason that inbound marketing is going to get a ding, and it is going to get a ding, because the lead quality for this is 8 to 10. It's probably the highest quality lead that you can get. But here's the problem with it. To make it such a high quality lead, you must produce many, many high value pieces of content, such as answers to questions, really valuable tutorials. You're building a lot of trust from people that don't know you by doing what I'm doing right now in this video, leveraging 35 years of marketing experience and trying to be helpful. And for a couple of you, I will probably hit the mark. You'll probably find this video very, very helpful. And when you do, we've got, like, maybe you happen to need like more leads or a different type of lead, or you're ready to build another website, or I can go on and on. You figure out that some of the services that InboundREM offers, like you go to the website, you read around, you go, oh, these guys make websites, they do PPC campaigns. Maybe I need to call them. That's inbound marketing. You really, 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 really help somebody digitally, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. And they will, like, you can also do this inbound marketing stuff through a lot of other formats. We used to do it through direct mail many years ago. But the most effective way to do it these days is literally what you're looking at. It is simply, let's do it online, because I can answer so many questions. I can do such a good job. I can use, Google, like a Google sheet here to basically addressed this question for you. Hopefully you knew what you wanted to, you had an understanding of what you're trying to learn when you clicked on the title of the video. And now hopefully I am helping you. And then by helping you, I absolutely have made an impression if I do it right. And then that creates the momentum for you to call or email somebody. And I don't know if it's just me. I mean, I'm good at it, and I've done a lot of support content at InboundREM, but I almost get zero waste of time leads. And most commonly, the reason people don't pull the trigger is cost and time, which are pretty indicative of anybody else. But I've done such a good job at qualifying that out by explaining the cost and explaining the time required for the service all on my website. So all those questions can be answered. The only reason I ever lose anybody is because they didn't go find all the content that I produced on that particular subject. And I oftentimes send it to them as a follow-up to a presentation, because that's my answer to everything. I've already got the answer for this. I've already created it. You don't need me to physically tell you. My answer remains the same. So I will send you a video and you'll get to see the answer. All right, lead gen systems. What falls into this is Sync, Boomtown, YLOPO. Not all of these systems are made the same, so there needs to be a range. Some of them are better than others. YLOPO, in my opinion, is one of the better ones. But that doesn't change the fact the person that's out there that's propagating the idea of lead cost and acquisition is actually YLOPO. And they should be. We all as marketers want to sell you on what we do well. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is a misleading number. I don't think that lead acquisition or cost of lead acquisition is nearly as important as overall lead conversion. Now, it's a little tough for us as marketers to get into that as a specific, because your ability as our customer to convert these leads is different client to client. So we can take our best client, who's the best at converting leads, who's the best salesperson, and say you get 80% conversion. We can take our worst, and I was just faulty of that right now myself, because I'm using a handful of clients that all do get the same kind of conversion rate I do, but we're all probably incredibly above average salespeople. So maybe out there, I've got a client that I haven't even talked to that's not proactive on following up with me, and they may be getting a 10% conversion rate off inbound leads, and their inbound leads may not be that great because they're probably not following my advice. So that, all of this stuff needs to be taken with a grain of salt. That's why I'm trying to explain it to you in a reasoned way. It is not ever such an easy dialogue to say, are lead systems good or bad? Well, I don't know. Like, have you ever used digital tools before? Here's what Sync, YLOPO, KV Core, Chime, currently Lofty, pretty much every system, they're all the same. They're search sites, and their job is to generate you large quantities of low intent leads. Okay. It doesn't make a difference which of these systems you're talking about. They all require a huge amount of after cycling. Lead gen systems are, if you're looking for high quality leads, this is not the place that you go. Full stop. If you're looking for, usually when I'm making recommendations for people to get into lead gen systems, I am talking to either small team runners, brokers, things like that, at which point teams make more sense in many cases than others of these services. Like, we are not focused on low quality, high volume. We're focused on high quality, low to medium volume. And I do have brokers that work with me, and we can get them 100 leads. Their salespeople love them when they're generated off a high quality platform. There is no pushback about working leads. Leads get worked without all the follow-up tools and time management stuff that you really need to do. We invert the psychology funnel where everybody wants the leads because they're good. But the thing about that is that we have, like, in one case, we have like 50 agents, We're getting maybe, if we're lucky, 60 to 100 leads. So they're only getting 1 lead a month. Now that's not, depending on how you've built your team and what you feel is relevant to your business, that may not sound all that great. Like, that may not sound all that great. So this is what, generally speaking, like, I mean, this is what like, these are, I'm probably going to have somebody shade out this, but these are what like leads look like. Okay. Off systems, you get a name, email address, and a text message, right? And you can get a lot of these or a little of these, and some of these leads will have notes and some of them won't. The ones with notes will be far more qualified than the ones that don't have notes. And most of the time, most platforms are not doing as good of a job as we are in terms of qualifying leads. So when you start saying lead systems, again, the score has to be broad, but I am only going to give most lead systems a 3 to 6 total. Now, that's not to say they can't make you a lot of money. Ylopo, once again, is one of those circumstances where there's so much support and so much training on how to get maximum value out of these leads that they're generating, that they're more like, they're a higher score, okay? But you do have to follow along with the training. You do have to pay attention to it. This idea that leads can be completely fire and forget, it does happen. But the reason that you hear so many people talking about it is it's rare. It doesn't, I've talked to plenty of Ylopo clients, KV Core clients, Sync clients, Agent Image clients, Real Estate Webmaster clients, Sierra Interactive clients. And generally speaking, yes, every once in a while you get a phone call. My clients do too. And they're just ready to go. It's like, bang, let's go. Okay, great, fantastic. But most of the time, it's it's a combination. It's email marketing, it's nurturing when somebody's registered, it's adding value over time. With systems, it's usually people calling after the fact, text messaging processes, behavioral marketing, where people are getting notifications as they're doing certain things inside their search systems. This is all standard stuff that is meant to increase value of these leads, and it works, no doubt. It does work. But even at the highest level, I have not found that it works as well in terms of lead quality. It does work better for lead quantity. Okay. So if you have a team or you just need to hand out 100 leads and you're hoping that your sales team is going to sift through the dirt to find gold, you got to go with the lead system. You know, that's when you're looking at this. Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com. Hate to say it, makes me sad, but these leads are very strong. Okay, they're very expensive. So they don't, I gotta say that, and it ranges. There's no way for me, a guy online, to give you an exact cost. There is a range of cost that goes into a Realtor or Zillow lead. But the overall range of quality is 7 to 9. They've done so much, all of these companies, to basically take all the work away from you. They call and verify the lead now. They give you your zip code. There's a reason they're dominant. And it's not just because of their websites. They get the lead, they qualify the lead, they hand it off. That doesn't mean that you still don't end up occasionally paying for something that's a complete piece of garbage. But once again, the reason that you end up getting that kind of lead and that people talk about it so much is that, number one, each one of these leads comes out to be hundreds of dollars. Hundreds of dollars. You're not getting that many in most cases. I'm not saying all, in most cases. So once again, you're not worried about volume. You're worried about lead quality. And if you're hiring them, you could be a broker, you could be handing this off to a sales team. You're still paying an exorbitant amount of money. The more you spend, the more discounts you can work it out with all three of these services. They're not all built equally. Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com. To be honest, it kind of depends client to client. Proactive clients are probably going to do better with Realtor.com, and the cost of acquisition is still a little less than Zillow, Trulia. That makes them a very viable system. All right, but not for everybody. If you're going to do lead systems, you must have a whole bunch of other ancillary systems set up, because especially if you're a team or a broker, that makes this a little shakier. Like, you need 5 Street lead routing systems, lead verification systems. You could also go with your own telemarketing staff that answers these questions, qualifies them, and gets them out to the right people. You can go with CRM, with lead ponds, and it like you could, or round robin, or intelligent AI based lead routing services, which can trigger into things like, where is this lead at? Where is the salesperson at? Bang, routes it to that person automatically. There's all sorts of things that are happening in our industry that are making this a more complicated subject than it used to be. But overall lead quality with these systems is very high. And so I hate to say it, because there's a lot of things about these companies that's killing our business. But so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I am committed to being even-handed, and lead quality with these guys tends to be very high. Direct mail. Funny thing is, I think that direct mail is so out of date. I don't think a lot of you don't understand what it is. Direct mail used to be, like, we called it like geographic farming. There's all sorts of words that we've used for direct mail. And basically, you get a list like from a list vendor, and then you create like a postcard or something, and then you mail it out to the same people for, let's call it, it used to be that we could see a conversion in a farm like in 1 to 3 years average throughout all of marketing. That's not the case anymore. And the way that I've used direct mail and postcards is for direct response phone campaigns. So sending out tens of thousands, millions of pieces to consumers so that you get the phone call. I'm sitting in the call center, and we're taking the calls that are being generated off direct mail. All right. So, but direct mail, and I've been in charge of sending out the direct mail to at later stages in my career. The interesting thing about direct mail is it still works. It's just not as fast, but it works very well. Unfortunately, right now, the timeline to return on investment, to be able to talk about lead quality, tends to be 5 years, 3 to 5 years, maybe. But the closing ratio percentage is going to be something like anywhere from 10 to 30%. So relatively high close ratio in my experience. Lopo, like to use closing percentage, like these leads, you're talking about 2%, 3%, maybe, if you're lucky. So maybe more. 5 out of 100 would be 5%, 5% closing ratio, something like that, off lead gen systems. If you're averaging out, it's going to be very low. 1 out of 100 would be lucky. Okay, making it a very low close percentage lead. Comparing that to 25 to 50 for inbound, or 20 to 50 for inbound. Even circle prospecting, like knocking on doors and getting somebody to the door, you're probably still dealing with better than 1 in 100. All right. Sphere of influence is good for the idea of what the closing percentage is, because it might be as high as 30 to 50%. All right. But direct mail, maybe 10% of the people that call you, maybe better. So for lead quality, it is actually better than lead generation systems, in my opinion. Okay, for lead quality. So it gets a higher score. It's going to get, I'm going to give it 5 to 7. Okay. If I was in the real estate business as an agent doing lead gen, direct mail would be part of my strategy. Probably in connection to a digital platform strategy, such as a really robust website, something like that. But would I be emailing out my farm? 100% yes. There's an idea in marketing that changes the ratio for all of these leads that Brian Tracy proposed in his Psychology of Selling. And it was, at that time, a lot of rigorous study had been done by a lot of marketing agencies and sales, and how people responded to salespeople was changing. And the way that it was changing is that people required more touches, is how it was described in Tracy's book. More touches, more introduction. But a touch in today's world is a Facebook page, a web page, an email, things like that. Psychologically, we need to be warmed up in order to become familiar with somebody and get closer and closer to a buying decision. So in that sense, radio, TV, it all still works. And the big brains at huge corporations, directors of marketing and things like that, I guarantee you they all understand this. They all know it. They all understand it. It's why Coca-Cola spends probably billions on ads that aren't even direct response ads. It's not like go out and like, so have a Coke today is as closest that they get to a CTA. Brand awareness with them makes it so that when you go to a machine, you buy a Coke. That's it. And they keep doubling down and reinvesting. Why? Because it costs 1 cent for the caramel and sugar mixture that goes into bottles and cans. 1 cent, right? So that mixture become like you can say, but you're selling that can for 75 cents. Think about the profit margin, 3 to 5 cents to make the can, 3 to 5 cents to distribute. Profit margin on Coke and other such things is insane, which is how they can afford to do so much marketing. And they're doing 5-touch marketing. They're getting in front of you in many different ways. So direct mail, I would use it. High close ratio. As a standalone strategy, a little shakier. Direct mail mixed with a really good website and really strong social media, pretty damn solid. Email marketing, still one of my favorite kinds of marketing, just hands down. People still open their emails, they still read the emails. The only thing is that email itself has gotten better at filtering. That just means that you have to be committed to the strength of your message. Most of you have been blacklisted on your emails. Your emails never see the light of day. They never see your clients. Why? Because even automated emails from IDX systems go into an updates folder in my Google platform. So it stays out of the main email box. You're never getting in the main email box, which means that most forms of marketing, as I have keep talking about, are really becoming influencer style marketing. In other words, people have to know you and like you and trust you enough to even get you in the right email box. To get your message seen, they have to have a relationship with you. And so that changes the perspective of what valuable marketing is. It is why I changed my entire career and became an inbound marketer. I am obviously passionate about it. The email marketing bit is email marketing ranges from the like the overall effectiveness. But if you're going to say what is the value of an email lead, for me, it's low because my email guy is so good that I get people who've never heard of me before clicking on buttons and calling me. It's like, okay. So it really kind of depends on how good your team is. So you're going to get a large range here because, but email can be high volume. That's an interesting thing that most people don't realize. Like you can get the email address of 90% of the people that live in your marketplace and start to send them information. If it was me, I'd figure out a high value application to promote to them or a high value source of information. That's how I would do it. And over time, very similar to direct mail, a lot of people would unsubscribe from your list. A small number of people would stay on your list. That small number of people mixed with another form of marketing, such as telemarketing, something like that, become incredibly high value. So email marketing by itself as a standalone lead generation strategy is really low, 3 to 6, let's call it. All right. But in connection with many other types of marketing, it could become a 10 to 10. I get so much communication from past and former clients that are responding off email, like people that I already talked to that have already been familiar with my content. And I get a huge amount of emailed in, basically lay down like deals. They're not really lay downs. They're really more that Brian Tracy 5-touch thing. They've gone through a presentation, they've talked to me, and I am not trying to follow up with them. That's where I think a lot of salespeople and people in general make a mistake. I'm not trying to follow up with these people and relate to the sales offer I made. They know what it was. And if they don't, I didn't do a very good job, or your sales team didn't do a very good job. And maybe they and you need to reevaluate your relationship. But at the same time, when you've done a good job and made an impression and somebody understands what the value proposition is, when they're getting emails about like this one, what is the best real estate lead? And then they open it up and they review it and they take a look at like the email that support and the video that supports this subject, and they think to themselves, gosh, I am sitting on a proposal from Robert. Maybe I should call him back. That's how really great email marketing happens. And those secondary leads, I'm going to give a second score here. They are 8 to 10. Those multi-touch leads nurtured by email are 8 to 10. They're so fantastic. Social media paid. So paid social media and paid pay-per-click are two additional forms of advertising. Unfortunately, there's no way to easy grade. If I was to give a social media lead like a Facebook lead, a WhatsApp lead, a Instagram lead, just a standalone score, no qualifiers, it's going to be a 1 to 3. It's one of the worst quality leads that exists. You can get hundreds of people responding to like a listing advertisement on Facebook. And unless you've done a very, 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 very good job with like a long form video as part of that listing advertisement, it's going to be a shit lead. It's going to waste a lot of your time. That's it. Full stop. So, nah. But if you were using social media in conjunction with other marketing, and there are people that break the mold. Like Travis Tom is doing a lot with Facebook that's pretty cool. Whether or not he generates something that's above like a 3 to 5 on a lead, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he's at, 3 to 5. So this is another form, like high form, high volume, very low quality in most cases, unless you're doing what is effectively a paid advertising strategy in combination with an inbound strategy. Now, that is another sweet spot. I do organic inbound as my primary vehicle, which is longer, harder, more time consuming. It's also more durable, which is something that we're going to be the last thing that we talk about, which is recurring lead generation based on previous efforts. That is why inbound gets 8 of 10, is because not only do you get the initial lead, but you get all the reoccurring or ancillary leads. Now, Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram and all those services owned by Drucker or whatever his name is, those are Zuck is those systems are designed so that the content becomes harder to find over time. So you don't get as much value out of the content. However, if you have a strong inbound message along with an advertisement and you consistently propel advertisement into what would be a Facebook landing page, you can continuously see a higher quality lead because you have long form messaging. And I've responded to countless Facebook ads. Full transparency. Recently signed up for one of my favorite sales trainers. But how do I know he was my favorite sales trainer? Is his ads ran 5 or 10 minutes long. And so I got long format. I saw like 3 to 5 of his ads over time. And then I signed up for his course. Okay. And it was all on Facebook. Facebook is brilliant for that. And if you're doing long form content now, it's more like an 8 to 10. You can run entire e-commerce empires off Facebook for lead generation. Real estate's a little trickier. You're not going to exactly push people off the ledge and get them to come buy a home from you. But you can convince them that you're the world's greatest realtor with some kind of value proposition, and you can use Facebook or Instagram or social media like YouTube in particular to do that. Now, social media inbound, which is really more organic, and this now stops talking as much about Facebook, but there are ways to make Facebook work for this lead generation type. There's a guy out there by the name of Will Fortner who is he's on my website. Just go to InboundREM.com if you want to learn about. So look at some of my case studies. These are people that I've talked to, done in-depth like case study dives, analytic dives, lots of questions, which is where, by the way, I get much of this information. I'm not just pulling it from my past experience. I'm pulling it from the 3 to 5 conversations per day that I have with real estate agents, including many of the people that I've done case studies on. So if you're curious to know what that looks like, go onto my site. And I'm asking them all the tough questions. How much do they spend, where their leads come in, how many of them close, how many do they generate? And I have to ask those questions every single day of everybody that calls me for the most part. So I have always some kind of boots on the ground view. Now, having said that, I'm a single guy that's probably had a few thousands of these conversations personally over the years. It doesn't make me the de facto person that knows everything about every single market, but I do think it gives me a pretty strong basis to create a chart like this. So social media is, inbound is like YouTube videos in particular. Now you're educating the videos can be found forever. They don't go bad. They stay around. Social media inbound leads are at least 8 to 10. They're one of the best kind of leads out there. You educate, you tell about a lifestyle. So many agents are using YouTube to create massive amounts of wealth for themselves. Levi is talking about it. Kristen Mayshore is talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. Mixed in with that, you can do retargeting, remarketing, other forms of stuff to drive even more people to your videos using a combination of paid and inbound strategies. Once you have good content, the sky's the limit in terms of what you do with it. Okay. Now, pay per click, PPC, and then I'm going to stop. There's lots of lead sources for real estate agents, guys. Lots. We could start talking about individual platforms like HomeLight, referral networks, lots. Blogging, lots and lots of lead generation sources. Pay per click in general is a 4 to 5. If you're using Google, it's generating a decent lead, especially if you have a decent landing page. All right. If you're using pay-per-click in conjunction with inbound, like so many of these other things, the lead quality spikes up. Most of the time, though, with pay-per-click, you got to do the same thing that you got to do with lead gen systems. And usually they're using pay-per-click in connection to a lead generation system, which is why I didn't call it out. However, you can use pay-per-click into your own website. The lead quality is probably going to be a little more stable, but like the Ylopo puts the finger on the scale. Like they're doing so much to inherently try to improve the quality of a lead. They get a slightly higher score, but there's only so much that you can do with high volume lead generation. You just can't make it the best lead in the world. They're always filtering out a ton of them. So you got to get good at filtering. Anyway, I think I've answered. And in terms of recurring revenue, systems, all you get is the lists. Email marketing will generate you some additional revenue. The cycle for those kinds of leads used to be once every 5 years, somebody moves. So email marketing, keep in touch, nurturing, there's that. But inbound marketing, content marketing, blogging, all that stuff, oftentimes pieces need to be updated for sure. But once you have something core, maybe something that performed well, you usually can update it with maybe about 25% of the time it took you to originally create it. And usually you don't have to update it once every 2 to 4 years. So really what you're talking about is you're talking about a very strong recurring revenue on something that was already generating you really strong leads in the first place. Just makes it incredibly, insanely productive. Again, the only negative is it takes a lot. There's a lot of pushing that initial effort up the hill in order to make this all work. But once you're up there, it's self-propelling and it's somewhat durable, way more durable than everything else on the list. Like 5-10 times more durable. Everything else is only as good as the lead or the customer they generated. Nobody else has long-term recurring profit inside their marketing. And some of that is by intent, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody wants to give you a lead system that destroys your need for lead providers. Okay. That's why I'm the only inbound guy, most likely. If I do a good enough job, I'll put myself out of business. All right. I hope that you all found this useful. If you have any questions about any of this, go ahead and leave the comments in the YouTube video below. If you look at my other videos, you'll see that I answer all the questions, every single one, all the time. I will happily answer your question. If I missed a lead type, if there's something that you disagreed with or that you agreed with strongly, either way, leave it down in the notes. Until next time, I've been Robert Newman. You can go to InboundREM.com and look at our About page, our services page, if you want to learn more about me or what we do. Thanks. See you the next time.